So welcome everybody. This is Gihan Pereira. I'm really looking forward to this online presentation, which is all about artificial intelligence. It's one of the biggest topics that is in demand at the moment across pretty much every industry. I've been working in the area for more than 30 years now, and what I want to do today is share the latest in the area, but also to make it really practical. So we won't go into these futuristic ideas of Terminator style robots, because that's not really very useful for most of us, but we'll talk about how to make it really practical. So for people who don't know me, and who haven't been to these online sessions before, I like to make my presentations very interactive. And my three standard rules of engagement for all my presentations. First of all, I want to give you something to think about, and you'll definitely get the chance to do that today. The second thing is be a bit playful in these sessions. So I always say this, I always say be playful, try things, go a little bit beyond what you would normally do in your everyday operations, even if it's just thinking about ideas. But today, I specifically want to say, be especially playful, because this is not going to be me lecturing, it's going to be me kind of facilitating a discussion, and it'll actually give you the chance to work on how AI could be useful to you in your team or in your organization. So it's a really big part of that is go all in, get the most that you can out of the hour that we've got together. And also, if you do that, you'll also get things that you can take away and put into practice in your team, in your organization. Big or small, in some ways it doesn't matter what size organization or what team you're working in, or what sort of leadership role you have. AI is going to affect us all, and is already affecting us all. So for those who don't know me, my name's Gihan Pereira, and I'm a futurist, a business futurist. I do a lot of work with presenting in person and online. And today is very much about, it's kind of like one of my master classes that I run called Accelerating Digital, but I've taken some elements of that I can present to a broader group. Generally, when I do this within organizations, or I have a keynote presentation called Accelerating Digital, which I run at big conferences as well. But today what I'm doing is taking one little element of that, so that we can drill down into it, so that you'll get more value from it, rather than me just giving you an overview and then it'll be very superficial. I've worked with lots of organizations around Australia, New Zealand, and the region particularly, and at different levels. And you can see there's a range of organizations here, and all of them have similar challenges around leadership, around moving out of the pandemic, around managing their teams, and in this in the context of today, specifically about artificial intelligence as well. Okay, so this is going to be very interactive, but let me give you a little bit of an overview first before I get you to actually do something in practice. Okay, so I have a lot of experience in the area of AI. This photo here was me graduating from the University of Western Australia. This was in the last century. It wasn't even in the 90s. It was in the late 1980s, and I graduated, and I have a computer science degree. And my honours thesis was about artificial intelligence. It was about robotics in particular, and if anyone cares or knows, and like that was a long time ago, and I was looking at specifically like robots being able to grasp things. And so you can imagine like a robot having to pick up a coffee cup would have a very different grasp and very different force than a robot trying to pick up an egg. And so we were looking at, my honours supervisor and I, we were looking at robot grasping strategies. Now, AI has come a long way since then, and I'll share with you the sort of things that we were doing in the 1980s and how it's changed. And some of the things that we were doing we're still using, but some of the things that they just weren't even on the horizon way back when I was doing AI. In fact, last year, there was some research done in the middle of the pandemic. So it's about a year ago, actually. So around about October, this research was done by Oracle. And they looked at anxiety and stress among people around the world. And as a result of the pandemic, you probably won't be surprised to hear that most people said 2020 was their most stressful year ever at work. But what was really interesting is that the research also said that people would turn to AI to talk to artificial intelligence about their stress and anxiety. So this research report, or this article that I posted on LinkedIn, the title says why people are turning to robots when they're sad and anxious at work. Was as a result of that research. And when I posted this on LinkedIn, usually I post something on LinkedIn, gets a couple of hundred views, maybe the occasional comment, but this one really exploded in terms of the engagement and the interaction. And this one you can see here, it's got like 150 comments and more than 25,000 views of that post. It was shared widely, not only by like, obviously I wasn't the only person who posted this, other people posted it as well, but this was just my little corner of the universe. It was a very popular post, and it was because of this research that said that AI is not only just doing grasping things with like a robot that we think of as traditionally what a robot can do, but AI was being used for human connection as well. And the majority of people, 62% of people, said that they would rather talk to a robot, to AI, than a human around their stress and anxiety and mental health issues. Now that was in the middle of a pandemic. This was like 12 months ago. So Oracle, they do this research every year. And the latest research, which only came out a couple of months ago, said that not only was that true, but also the vast majority of people would trust AI more than they would trust a human in helping them guide and shape their career path. So AI is being used for things that in the past we would have thought are purely within the domain of humans. So it is really taking over many parts of our lives, and the sort of things that we would have thought there's no way a computer could do this. Now AI and artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, those sort of things allow computers to be able to do the sort of things that previously we thought only humans could do. This is a story I used to share about, like I think I first shared this about 10 years ago, and this is 7 or 8 years ago. This is a story that was, at the time, it was pretty new. It was the idea that Target in the US was using AI to kind of understand customers' buying habits. And there was this famous story that broke, a very controversial story, that Target in a small town was sending out catalogs to their customers. So they got them on their mailing list. They were sending out catalogs. And one girl who was like 16 or 17, she was getting in her catalog, she was also getting coupons, discount vouchers for baby products. And her dad was outraged, and he went to the local Target and demanded to speak to the manager and said, "What are you doing? My girl's not even out of school. Are you trying to get her pregnant?" And it turned out that she was already pregnant, and she hadn't told her parents. And but because of her buying habits, because of what she was buying, and they weren't the sort of things you'd think. She wasn't buying baby goods. She was buying stuff like a large bag, which was bigger than a normal handbag, but it would allow her, when she had a baby, to carry more stuff in it. Now, like, you might buy a bag for lots of different reasons, but Target, by looking at what she bought in her bags and her beauty products and sanitizers and things, that combination of things meant that it was quite likely that she was pregnant and in the in a certain stage of her pregnancy. And therefore, they decided that it was worthwhile taking the chance and sending her coupons for baby products, because she could have been in the market for them. Now, I used to tell this story a long time ago. When I first told the story, people were just amazed that companies are doing that. But of course now we know that sort of thing is happening all the time. But way back in 2012, this story about how Target figured out a teenager was pregnant before her father did was breaking news. And that's just one example of AI. A funny thing happened. So yesterday, when I was doing my research on this presentation, and I was just rechecking all my sources to make sure I got all my stories right, and just checking the accuracy of the sources, I looked up this story, and just did a Google for that, just Google search just to make sure that was still correct the way I was telling it, and it took me to the New York Times. Now, the New York Times is behind a paywall, so you can't, I couldn't actually read the article, which was published on the New York Times, but it came up with the option for me to pay, and I got this little special offer. It said normally it's $5 a week, But now, for you, you can get it for $1 a week. And the idea is it's $1 a week for a year, and then it reverts to the regular rate, and some people will continue at that regular rate. And I thought, well, that's $1 a week's not bad. I might actually subscribe. And then I realized I had my Firefox browser open because I was using it for something else, and I don't normally use it. I normally use Google Chrome. So I thought, yep, I'm going to subscribe to the New York Times, so let me go to the same page on Google Chrome. So like 30 seconds later, I switched over to my other browser, and it says, here's my access for 50 cents a week. And so how did that happen? And it's not that I'm a subscriber to the New York Times. It's just that based on the number of times I've probably clicked on New York Times articles over the years and what information the New York Times can gather from me, some artificial intelligence in the background has determined that if they offered me this at this price, then it would, there's a chance that I'd buy it. And the fact that I was using two different browsers meant that I was actually almost acting like two different people. So that was AI customized to the person who was visiting their website. It's exactly what happens when you get companies like Netflix. And Netflix says, because you watched this this show, here are some other recommendations for you. And there might be in this other similar genres from what I watched, maybe similar cast, maybe similar producers and directors, but also because Netflix knows that people who watched the show that I just watched, and they are typically likely, they're likely to watch similar kind of shows. So Netflix, without even knowing what my likes are, they know that people like me would have watched similar shows, so they'll recommend them to me. Spotify does the same thing. It recommends things to add to my playlist, and sometimes the same artists, and that's obvious, and you could go, well, a human could do that, but sometimes it's simply because other people have created similar playlists, and so they think my music tastes are similar to theirs, and chances are they're right. Amazon does the same thing. It says, customers who bought this book also bought other books, and it'll recommend things for you based on what it knows about, not about you, but about other customers. Okay, one last example. And I'm just trying to give you a flavor of some of the things that AI is doing at the moment. AI is taking my job, literally my job. So Sophia the robot is a humanoid robot, and she's got some autonomy in being able to walk and sit down and do things like that, but she's also got some AI built into her, and she can, she's been on chat shows and answered questions from TV presenters, and she's appeared as a keynote speakers as a keynote speaker at some conferences. So instead of hiring me, and they should be hiring me as a keynote speaker, they're hiring Sophia the robot now. So every time I think about, there's no way that AI could do what I'm doing, I always remember to myself, well, Sophia is already doing that. Okay, so I've given you a bit of an overview here. Let's get into this, the start of the interactive bit. So from now on, the next 45 minutes, I'll still give you a few more examples, but the rest of it is going to be quite interactive. And let's start with something simple. Let's do a poll. So I've given you some examples of AI in various domains. I'd like to know, how do you feel about AI in your organization? So to do the poll. Okay, so here are the results as they're coming in. You can see them here. So there is a range here. So there's, okay, amazed, fantastic. Yeah, uneducated, great. That's really good, because I hope that in an hour from now, you'll be more educated, and you'll feel a little bit more skilled in terms of making some smart decisions for your organization with AI. What else have we got? Worried. Yeah, unknown opportunities. Good. I hope you'll see some opportunities by the end of this. I don't know how I think that it might have cut off the end of that. I'm guessing it's like, I don't know how I can use it. Complementary, yeah. So, the thing about that, if I can just respond to that thing around complementary, the question about that research I cited about can a robot, I'd rather talk to a robot than a human. All the research is saying, all the research is actually saying it's not an either-or situation. It's going to be both. So humans and robots together are better than either one of them alone. Okay, thank you very much for doing that, folks. Let me now look at what I want to do is give you an overview of different types of artificial intelligence, because when people talk about AI, they're sometimes talking about very different things, and I think it's really useful from a practical viewpoint if I share with you four types of AI. And what I'm going to do is I'll share with you these four types, starting with the one that we actually studied way back in the 1980s, 1990s, and going to what's really common now. As we're doing each one of them, think about how would this apply in your organization. And there could be applications of all four of them in your organization, in your team, in your business. Because what we'll do is after we do these four, and I'll give you a little bit of time to think about them and to write down some notes for yourself, then we'll break up into groups, and then you can choose one of them and share them with the rest of your group. And as best as I can, we'll try to keep the groups together for the rest of the session. So you're kind of building on what you're doing now. So this is the start, this is the overview, and you're going to build on each of these as we go. Okay, so I've given each of these a name. These are very non-technical names. So this one, the first one, I'm calling sending the clones. Okay, and this is the way that we thought that way back in the 1980s, 1990s, we thought this is the best way to do artificial intelligence. So what we would say is, let me switch over to this here and I'll sketch it out for you. So let's say we wanted to program a robot to do heart surgery, and it's obviously physical stuff, but it's also understanding the mental processes involved in doing heart surgery. So what you do is we'd build what we call an expert system. So you go to an expert, so you go to a cardiothoracic surgeon and you'd say to her, what do you do when you have a patient presenting to you? And she might say, well, there's these four things that I might look at first, and then based on, if this patient presents with number 3, then there are these other options here, and based on that we do this and then go off in these different directions, and basically we build up this large decision tree of what you do when you see a patient and how do you analyze that. And then of course there's the actual doing the surgery itself. So the idea was we kind of download, we try to clone human experts and then program them into computer version of it. And that is how we get the artificial version of human intelligence. It's a pretty good way of doing it, and many AI systems still use that kind of technology. Okay, so just think about in your business, in your organization, in your team, who would you clone, right? And don't worry about how you would do it, and don't worry about how much it's going to cost. Just think about, if I was able to clone somebody, and it doesn't have to be even somebody who is employed in your business, if you are able to clone somebody and get that working as an AI in your business, who would you choose, and why? Okay, so I'll give you 45 seconds. I'll give you a little bit of time, a little bit of thinking time, and you don't only have to find one answer to this. You could have multiple answers to it, which is fine. It's good. All right, I'll go off camera for a bit to let you think. Okay, the next one. The next one is the carrot and stick version, the methodology, and this is used a lot in artificial intelligence at the moment. And let me demonstrate that by by showing how you can use AI to teach AI to play noughts and crosses. So I did ask earlier, just before people joined, I asked the early birds who joined whether somebody would volunteer, and Sona kindly volunteered. So Sona, can I just ask you to just turn your microphone on, please? Because what we're going to do is we're going to play noughts and crosses. Okay, so nice simple game of noughts and crosses. Sona, you said that you'd like to go first. So actually, let's number these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, where would you like to start?
7.
7. Okay, so Sona's going to go with the 7. Okay, I'll do 4. Okay, where would you go? 3. Okay, obviously I have to go 5.
Ooh, 6.
Okay, I have to go 9.
2. No, sorry, 1.
1. Okay. Okay, I'll go 8.
2.
An idiot. Okay, so I lost the game. All right. Now here's my point. Right. So, I was kind of playing a little bit of strategy, a little bit of logic. So Sona, you start off with 7, and there is a strategy that says if you start with 7, if you start with any of the corners, then the second player has to play in the center. Otherwise, the first player always has a winning strategy. So there's strategies like that. But let's say if I was training using the carrot and stick method, if I was training some artificial intelligence how to do this, the way you do it is this. So Sona goes 7, and I go from 7. I have got 8 other choices that I could make as my first move. And let's say I pick any one of them at random and give them equal weighting. I actually picked 4, which was kind of at random. And then Sona said 3, and then I picked 5. So at one point we had 7, 4, 3. And now the second choice I haven't got 8 choices, I've got 6 choices. And again, I pick them at random. And we go to the end, and I'm kind of playing at random. And if I'm playing at random, I'm going to lose a lot of games to start with. But what happens is, at the end of each game, if I lose, then I go back through my moves, and I say those random choices that I made, I'm going to penalize them a little bit. I'm going to give them a little bit of a stick. So let's say, instead of my first choice of 4 being, let's give it 100 points. Like every choice is 100. I take away 1 from that, so that's only 99 times out of 100. I pick that one next time. So every time I lose, I penalize the path that I've taken. Every time I win, I reward the choices that I made. And if you play that over and over and over again, what you'd find is that if Sona plays a corner like 7, eventually the AI would learn that I should play 5. Now, the AI has no idea that it's playing a center move versus a corner. It doesn't know about strategy. It just knows that by the carrot and stick method, by all this punishment and reward, 5 is the one that tends to lead to more winning strategy, more winning outcomes. Okay, so that's the carrot and stick approach. If you hear people talk about neural networks, that's basically what this is. And this is actually how babies learn. So neural is a brain, like the network of neurons in our brains. This is how we learn. As babies, we do things, we have no idea what we're doing, but we either get rewarded or we get punished for them. And some giant adult above us either coos and says, oh, how cute, or they punish and say, no, don't do that. And it doesn't mean we'll never do it again, but we're less likely to do it. And over time, we learn and we build up these things that we call strategies, but they're actually learned over time. Okay, so that's the carrot and stick approach. Okay, so give you some time to think about. If you could train an AI to do something in your business, in your organization, just through repetitive training, what would it be? So could it be, I get the star salesperson, and or you get people to, if they're doing sales, you get them to do sales calls, and you get, depending on what the outcome is, then you could go back and, like you get the star salesperson to go, no, reward this or punish this, and so on. Okay, so what could you do? I'll give you time to think about that. Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, the next one's a little bit simpler to explain. It's I've called this getting to know you, and this is about AI learning about your personal habits over time. The best way to explain this, and the example that many organizations are already doing, by the way, thank you, Sona. If you send me either in the chat or an email with your postal address, I'll send you a copy of my book, Disrupted, as well. So thank you for being the volunteer. Okay, so the best example of this is membership cards. So my Woolies rewards card, it gives me rewards, but it also rewards Woolies by being able to track my buying habits, my spending habits, and Woolies can tell me that I can earn extra points by buying products that I would regularly buy, and gives me special bonuses. It will say if you spend a little bit more than this in your weekly shop, then you can earn X number of Qantas frequent flyer points, and the amount that it determines just happens to be a little bit more than what I would normally spend in my weekly shop. So it's customized to each customer to give them an incentive to spend more at Woolies. And the only reason it works is because it's got this loyalty card, because Woolies isn't yet tracking me and identifying me as I walk in the store. The only way it knows is because it's got my my details, because I scan my rewards cards to earn rewards and points. Okay, so that's a really simple example. So the question here is, how would you, if you were able to track your customers, like what would be really useful? Like what would be useful? Not how would you do it, but what would be really useful to be able to track your customers, to track your employees, to track the like media interest in your organization. What would be most useful? Okay, thank you. I hope you got some ideas there. Okay, the last one. So the last one, I'm calling birds of a feather. So this is the idea that AI doesn't only have to track you and understand your buying habits. Even if it understands what people like you are doing, it can make recommendations for you. And I've given examples of Netflix and Amazon and Spotify, and the Target example was exactly that. So the example here is like on my Kindle, which you don't worry about trying to read it. When I open my Kindle, it tells me the books that I've been reading recently, which is really useful. But then it has a section called Recommended for You, and obviously it's going to pick similar authors, that same authors that I've read in the past, same genres, but it'll also, these recommendations are things that people who have bought and read these books have also bought and read these. So Amazon is saying, well, we don't know you individually, Gihan Pereira, but we know that people like you are likely to like these kind of books. And you know what? Quite often they're right. Frighteningly so sometimes. Okay, last opportunity. Like what would be useful? So this means like if you were able to get data from your community of customers, of people like so on, what would be really useful to have in your business? So for me, because I speak to large audiences, it can kind of be useful to know, like in this audience, which of these stories are going to have the best traction, which of these stories are going to resonate the most. If if I'm working with a group of senior leaders and I know their demographics, then what should I be doing? Like that would be most valuable for them. Okay, so some of this might seem a little bit like sci-fi, but it's happening already. Okay, last option. Sorry, the last of these four. Let me give you 45 seconds. So just think about, if you had access to data like that, what would you want? Okay, great. I can see people with videos on. I can see people thinking rapidly, which is really good. Oh, let me go back to this slide here. I'm going to stop for questions now. And as I did send an email earlier to the people who registered saying if you've got questions, please ask them in advance. And I'll give priority to those questions. So let me answer one of the questions that did come in advance, and then let me just check if other people have questions. And so let me answer Rachel's question first, and then after that, if anyone who's got a question, if you want to turn your microphone on and ask it out loud, or if you don't want to turn your mic on and you just want to ask it in the chat room, that's fine as well. Okay, so the question Rachel asked was, she said, how can a small business, a micro business, take advantage of AI? And look, I love that question because there are so many ways that they can do it, and in some ways, I'm going to show you some examples here. And in some ways, I think some of the bigger organizations are going to feel a bit jealous when they see what is available to smaller businesses. So there's a website called AppSumo, and I've only picked this as one example. It's a website where you can buy software that does a whole bunch of things, and AppSumo tends to be, it's the software that it sells is mostly provided by kind of like these little startup businesses. So they've created software which is really useful for doing one particular function for a business owner, and it's pretty good, even though it's early stage software. They're not these big Microsoft companies which have huge budgets and rolling out to the whole world. And AppSumo, what they do is they offer the software as a special price. Okay, and like I bought a whole bunch of stuff through AppSumo over the years, and I went through the AppSumo site after I got Rachel's question, and I had a look at some of the things that they're selling around AI software. So let me give you a quick run through of just some examples. So you can use AI in this case for doing editing videos. So it'll automatically take out ums and ahs, and it'll do the right automatic editing of a video after you record it. And by the way, the prices that you see here, like you can see $69, that's not $69 a month, it's $69 one-off. and you get lifetime access to it and all upgrades. US dollars, but still it's a pretty good deal. This is one for writing content for you. So if you're not a writer, but you recognize the value of content, AI will do it. Here's another one that'll do transcription of audio and video. Here's one that'll do an online help desk where it's like there's humans who are responding to your questions, but it's actually AI that's powering it. Here's one that'll write marketing copy, so you can write sales letters for your website. Here's one that'll do scheduling, so if you want to set up meetings, AI will look after your calendar and schedule meetings with other people in times that you specify. Here's one that helps you do some marketing analysis of your online. This is particularly for online marketing. Here's one that will help you be more productive by you put your to-do list in there, and AI learns which tasks you work on, which things you like to do in the mornings, which things you need large blocks of time for, and then it recommends what you should work on at particular times of the day. Here's one. What is this one? Oh, this is for financial documents where it can, if people sending you invoices, then it will automatically scan the invoice and put the details into spreadsheets or into your accounting software. This is one that'll translate your videos into multiple languages. Here's one that'll manage your email inbox and to try and keep it as uncluttered as possible. And here's the last one. This is the one like Amazon's recommendation engine. If you've got an online shop, it'll do that thing that says people who bought this also bought this, or when somebody puts something into the shopping cart, it'll recommend other things for it, and you don't have to decide that. The AI will learn that over time. Okay, so I just want to give you some examples of what's already available, and these are available by individuals or small businesses who are creating these apps, which they're then making available to the world. So I think large organizations quite often, because they've had decades of legacy software, they don't realize how much new stuff is out there and what's really available right there at the click of our fingers. We have access to so much power. Okay, any other questions before we get on to the next bit? Questions about any of this, actually. It doesn't only have to be about what I've just shared with you, but the next thing we're going to talk about is, so we talked about like what you'd like, and I hope you've got some notes about what you'd like. The next bit we're going to talk about is what you, like how you're going to feed the AI monster, okay, and what are some of the ethical implications of that. And after this next section, I'll get you to like work in little groups to share ideas for each other. Okay, let's look at this next bit. So AI, artificial intelligence, relies on huge amounts of data. The more data you can feed it, the better the AI can become. The better as in the more fine-tuned it is. It's like that old kids game of hungry, hungry hippo. So AI is hungry, hungry, and how are you going to feed it? And the way you feed it is going to be different depending on which of those 4 types of AI you're going to work on. So let me get you ready for the group session that we're going to do now. So think about those 4 types again, and you've made some notes about those 4, and I hope you've got some ideas for yourself. Pick one of them, just for yourself, pick one of them that you think would be possibly the most valuable for your team, your organization, your business. You can change your mind later because I'm not going to ask you to share it with me, but just pick one of them. And then let's look at how you're going to collect data in each of these 4 areas. So if you've picked one, which is the sending the clones one, which is you're trying to clone, you're trying to duplicate the intelligence of a world-class expert, then what you need to do, the data you're going to get, are from the world-class experts. So you need to hire world-class experts. If you want to learn how to do, if you want to teach artificial intelligence how to do heart surgery, you need to talk to a cardiothoracic surgeon and go through that process I explained. So there are many in Australia. The one that I particularly like Dr. Nikki Stamp because she's from my hometown in Perth. So if you wanted to teach AI to do heart surgery, you'd go and hire Nikki, and I'm sure she's not cheap, and you'd ask her and you'd spend a lot of time with her trying to get her to talk about the process that she uses. And you may not be happy with just one person. You may want to have 3 or 4 different people to do that as well. The next type if you want to do the carrot and stick, if you want to play noughts and crosses, if you want to do that, then what you need to do is play lots of games of noughts and crosses. And in fact, the way that AI does it, because they're like Sona was very generous in her time in playing one game of noughts and crosses with me, but she wouldn't want to do that over and over again. And what they do is they get they tap into the power of the crowd. So, for example, I'm sure you've seen things like this, where to prove that you're human, you have to select all the squares with traffic lights. So that's really useful because it does prove that it's not software that's trying to fill in a form or get into a website. But the other thing that it's doing is that it's like Google and companies are using this to train their self-driving cars. So when you see something that says select all squares with traffic lights, part of what you're doing is you, as a human, are teaching self-driving cars how to recognize traffic lights. And if there's thousands of people doing it every day, what it's doing is helping, like we're feeding the AI. We're feeding data to that artificial intelligence. So the question there is, how are you going to collect data if you're going to do a carrot and stick program? So if you're going to like reward and punish, how are you going to do lots and lots and lots of different activities and over and over and over again to be able to collect enough data that the AI learns from it? Okay, the next one. If you're doing the getting to know you one, which is understanding about individuals, then I reckon the easiest way to do that is with some sort of membership card, loyalty card, something like that, that allows you to track individuals and their behavior. And the last one, if you're going to do this birds of a feather, then what you need is a huge bunch of people. So it's not only tracking a small number of customers, but what you need is large groups of people so that the AI can learn overall behavior. And for that, you kind of, I think, you need something where you can have large communities. And generally that means you do something like offer something free. Because if you get people into something free, then they participate, and the cost of their participation, the price they're paying is not money, but the price they're paying is they're giving up their data and their behavior to you so that you can use that to train your artificial intelligence. Coursera, the example I've got here, is an online university. And what they do is, it's like these are all online courses. They're called MOOCs, massive open online courses, and many of them are free. You can see there's almost 2,000 of them are free, and it's not a whole course, like it's a unit of a university course, and you can pay. And you can pay if you want to get the accreditation, the assessment, and the bit of paper at the end. But otherwise, you can do the course for free. If you're just interested in learning, you can do it for nothing. Okay, so it might mean a change to your business model where you offer something free because you think the data are more valuable than charging money for it. Okay, so of those four, how are you going to collect the data? The second thing, and I reckon alarm bells would have gone off for some people already, if I say to you, what could possibly go wrong? Like, you're collecting people's data, you're making decisions based on them. If you want to know, and this is quite a big topic at the moment, and a topic of interest. If you want to know more about it, then read Cather Neal's book, Weapons of Math Destruction. And she talks about the problems of using things like algorithms and computer software to make decisions about people. So just a couple of examples, like she talks about, or there are examples about, let me do this way, this is better. Policing. So police departments in various places are using AI to determine where there's likely to be crime, and therefore they can have more cops out there to prevent the crime. But actually, they're not measuring crime. What they're measuring are arrests. So if they happen to be arresting, like, because they have a bias against, say, for example, people of color and those neighborhoods, then there are more arrests in those areas, and they feed that into the AI, and the AI says, well, there's more crime in that area because more people got arrested, and so we're going to send more people to that area, which just becomes one of those vicious cycles, because it's the wrong way around, because they're matching on arrests based on the data that's being fed to it. Similarly, Amazon had this, they thought they'd use AI to help with their hiring practices, to make the hiring more objective. And they said, who should we hire based on these resumes, based on who's going to be more successful. and they looked at their historical data, and then they eventually got rid of the program because essentially the program was saying you should hire straight white males because they're the ones who are most likely to be successful. Now that's actually not true. It's just that there was a bias towards them at the start, there was a bias towards them throughout their careers, and so what popped out at the end were the most successful people happened to be white males, like let's say straight white males. I'm exaggerating this here, but you can see the problem when you feed the AI just raw data, and the data is biased, and it can have really strong consequences. If you've got a home loan in the last 10 years, there's almost certainly it's some form of AI that has been involved in assessing your loan application to see whether you're an appropriate person to get a loan. And there's still human involvement as well, but the challenge is sometimes the AI assessment, the AI can't explain how it made that assessment. Just as when I was playing noughts and crosses with Sona, the AI wouldn't actually know the strategy of going, if you go in a corner, then you have to go into the center. It just goes, oh, 5 was the one that was the most productive in terms of wins, so therefore we'll always choose 5. And the last one there, similarly with paroles, but prisoners on parole, they found that because there was a bias in judges releasing prisoners on parole, when the data was fed into AI, the AI replicated that bias. Okay, so let's do a session where a group session, because I just want to change the energy in the room before we finish up. So we need to talk. Okay, so I'm going to put you into groups. Think about the example that you've used, that you've chosen for yourself, and the 2 things I'd like you to think about and share with the group is what do you think you're going to do to feed your AI? So which of those methods that I've talked about? And the second one is, what could possibly go wrong? And not only in a negative, from a negative perspective, but also understanding what could go wrong to say, what are we going to do about it? If we're going to track people based on loyalty cards, are we going to have very clear and simple disclaimers and declarations of what we're going to do with that information? Okay, so those are things I'd like you to do in the group. So let me put you into rooms now. So you'll have rooms of about 4 or 5 people in the room. I know there's some people here who have me beamed in on like they're all sitting around a meeting room table, and you have me on the Zoom screen on your big TV screen in your meeting room. Don't go into, so if you'll get asked to go into the room, but just ignore that because you can do this within your team, of course. Okay, thanks everyone for coming back. I hope you had the start of an interesting conversation there, because this is 2 of the biggest questions that we are facing with AI. Like, how do we feed it? How do we get data to build it? And also, what are some of the things that could go wrong? And both of those are really important discussions. Jonathan says, nice people, so good. And as I said, it's the start of the conversation, and I hope you continue this conversation in your workplaces as well. Okay, so let me do the last bit, and the last bit is actually about people, and it's about who are you going to ask to lead and to mentor you through your program. And so this is a little bit it's a little bit confronting for some people when I share this. So this is a quotation. I love this quotation for 2 reasons. So this is from Laura Greenwood, and she's like a young adult paranormal fiction writer, and so she says tradition is just peer pressure from dead people. Okay, now, look, and if I can just tell, the second reason I like it is the title of her book, Thanks for Nothing, which I love. But if you think about this, that the people who are going to lead you on your AI and digital transformation journey, should they be the most experienced, the most senior, the most grey-haired people in your organization? Because it used to be that the more experience you had, the more seniority you had, and the longer you've been in the game, the better you are to talk about the future. But that's not the case anymore. And maybe the people you want to lead you into the future are the ones who come to you without that disruption, without that tradition. They're willing to disrupt because they don't even think they're disrupting. This is just based on what they know. And sometimes, as I said, like what we've learned in the past, just like AI, what it learns is based on the data that it's fed. And the data that we've been fed aren't necessarily the best for taking us into the future unless we consciously make the change around that. So I mentioned Coursera as one of the examples of a AI. Oops, jumped ahead. Coursera, which is this massive open online course software, and this is it's a billion-dollar business now, and most of the students in Coursera are completely free. They pay nothing, but it's still valued as a billion-dollar business because they make enough money from the tiny minority who actually pay. Now I happened to be, I wasn't deliberately eavesdropping, but I was at a university cafe, my university where I go and work when I'm don't want to work from home, but I go and sit at the university cafe, and I was happened to be listening to a conversation next to me, the table next to me, where these two lecturers were talking, and one of them said, we've been asked to put something on Coursera. And yes, Jonathan, the UWA club, yes, put the course on Coursera, and we've been asked to do that. And she was explaining how Coursera works and what she was doing and how students enrolled and how she was engaging with them. And her colleague said, like, how did they make any money? Like, how could this model actually make any money? And it was completely outside his mental model of how tertiary education can work. It was a complete flip of the business model, completely different. And it just reminded me that maybe the people who should be leading universities aren't the people who've got experience in leading universities. And that's just one example, but I think it's true everywhere. And so if you're thinking about education for the future, what if we have something like TED-Ed? So TED provides all the materials available free. TED-Ed allows you as an educator to supplement a TED video with your own exercises and multiple choice quizzes and so on. Or maybe you have the Netflix model for education, like Masterclass. So masterclass.com has been around for a bit now. So I signed up for a course so you can learn comedy from Steve Martin, learn tennis from Serena Williams, learn horror writing from Stephen King. There's a whole bunch of world-class experts who've done this pre-recorded stuff, and I signed up for learn comedy from Steve Martin. It was a really good course. My family don't believe me, but it was a really good course. And at the time, it was like $100 US per course. And even then, I thought that's a bargain. But now you can join up for $30 a month, and you get access to everything. So they've kind of taken that Netflix or Spotify model, and you get access to all the experts on Masterclass for $30 a month. It's a different way of thinking. So the last thing I'd like you to think about is, we won't break into group, is if you're thinking about somebody in your organization who you would like to be your mentor, if you're a senior in this area, a senior leader, or you've got a lot of experience in this area, who's going to be your mentor in artificial intelligence? And sure, you can pick me, and I'd love to work together with you, but it's not just me, but there may be somebody in your organization. Hint, hint, it might be somebody who's younger. It could be also somebody who's to broaden the diversity of your thinking, and it doesn't only have to be younger. And also, in a more formal position, who's going to take the lead? And it may not be you who's the best person to do that. Okay, so I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that before we finish. Okay, and just write that down for yourself, because that's I think one of the biggest challenges in like AI is part of digital transformation. One of the biggest challenges in this area is that the people who know more about it aren't the people who are who are in senior positions and positions of influence and positions of power. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope I've given you a little bit of a glimpse into how AI could be useful in your team, your business, your organization. This is not something that we can cover in a 1-hour presentation and your full bottle on AI, but my goal was just to start the conversation today. If you want to engage with me more, then if you go to gihanspeaks.com, I do keynote presentations. There is a keynote presentation called Accelerating Digital. I also run more of these tailored masterclasses within organizations, and now I'm comfortable doing them online or in person, and I have been for a long time. It's just now organizations are also comfortable doing things online if you want to, and also bring me into your strategic planning to give you a futurist overview before you get into your planning for the next 5 or 10 years. And the last thing is there is an online program as well for leaders. If you're interested in any of those things, gihanspeaks.com is the best place to get started. I see, let me just quickly see if there's comments. There's a few thank yous. So thank you to Jonathan. Thank you to Carol Ann for the kind words. Rachel's mentioned the Curtin edX courses. Yeah, these free courses. Yep. And many universities are providing many of the courses free now. So it is available. Education is available to anyone who needs it. That's not the problem. Okay, thank you everyone for coming along. My last message, which I often say, is don't wait for things to be perfect. Start before you're ready, because the world won't wait for you. Thanks everyone. If you want to engage with me, go to gihanpereira.com and you can email, phone, everything, connect with me on social media. Have a great day. I'll see you in the future.